anatomical position. Now, the reason this is important is if there isn't a diagram or a visual or some model or some person in front of you, you have to understand what would be the baseline of the assumption. For the aspect of anatomical position, the body needs to be in an erect state, which means straight up and down, could be laying flat on a table, but the limbs are not bent, so the knees, the elbows, the shoulders, everything is straight up and down. Palms are facing to the front or anterior, and toes are facing front or anterior as well if you're standing up. So this is what's used if you don't have a visual representation of what you're looking at. So if there's a question that asks about something with no visual, you default to anatomical position. Some directional terms. The first two, superior, inferior. You might have heard of these before. Superior is going up. So for example, the nose is superior to the mouth. The chin is superior to the sternum. But notice there's always 2 points. Point A is superior to point B. All of these directional terms have to have 2 points of reference. You can't just say the mouth is superior. Well, sure, the mouth is superior to the sternum, but the mouth is not superior to the nose. So you must always have the 2 points of reference. The opposite, or the antagonist here, is inferior. You could say the chin is inferior to the nose. You could say that the sternum is inferior to your head. So inferior is the point of reference is down. The next ones we have anterior and ventral and posterior and dorsal. Now the top two grouping, the bottom two grouping, they're kind of synonyms for humans. Now there are subtle differences, but for most purposes, we'll use them interchangeably. So the term anterior means towards the front. You could say that the sternum, this bone right here, the sternum is anterior to the heart, which is behind it. You could say that you have your heart is anterior to the vertebrae, which are along your back. Now, in the case of posterior or dorsal, posterior is more towards the back. If you're looking at your vertebrae, that's the bones right along your back, the vertebrae. You can say the vertebrae are posterior to the heart. You can say the heart is posterior to the sternum, this bone right here. So directional, moving one direction or the other through the body, from front to back, anterior to posterior. Medial and lateral. Now in this case, medial is towards the middle. Lateral is towards the outside. You could say that your nose is medial to your ears. You could say that your sternum is medial to your shoulder. Lateral is the opposite. The ears are lateral to the eyes. That's because the ears are further out. You could say the eyes are lateral to the nose. Again, further out. So medial towards the center, and watch out, medial with an L at the end. Be careful of the spelling. And lateral is heading out. It's further out. So medial towards the middle, lateral towards the outsides. Proximal and distal. Now these can be a little more interesting because proximal and distal is for the limbs, arms and legs. The term proximal, think proximity, it's closer. Your elbow is proximal to the wrist. Well, why is the elbow proximal to the wrist? Well, the elbow is proximal because it's closer in proximity to the point of attachment, the shoulder. So your elbow is proximal to the wrist. You could say that the wrist is proximal to the fingers because the wrist is closer to the point of attachment. Same thing for the legs. The knee is proximal to the ankle. Now, why not just be in anatomical position and say, you know what? The elbow is superior to the wrist. Well, in this position, that holds true. But if I all of a sudden bend my arm, now is the elbow still superior to the wrist? No. But no matter what position you put it in, proximal is always accurate. So the elbow is proximal to the wrist, closer to the point of attachment. Distal. Distal is further away from the point of attachment. You can say your wrist is distal to your elbow. It's further from the point of attachment. Your toes are distal to your ankle. Your ankle is distal to your knee, further from the point of attachment, the hip in that case. So limbs, proximal and distal, are the terms here. Proximal, closer to attachment point, distal, further away. Superficial and deep. In the case of superficial and deep, we're going towards the surface of the skin or going towards the core of the body. For superficial, you can say that your skin is superficial to the muscles below it. You could say that your skin is superficial to your bones. You could say that your ribs are superficial to your lungs, closer to the outside. So it doesn't have to be the outside like the skin always. The ribs are superficial to the lungs because they're closer to the outside. Deep, heading in. The heart is deep to the ribs. Sure, it's more towards the center of the body. You could say that the ribs are deep to the skin, more towards the center. So superficial and deep. But why do I even care about these directional terms? Well, this first unit is kind of laying the foundation for a lot of later units. This directional terminology will be used in the skeletal system, in the muscular system, we'll use it in the nervous system, we'll use it in the cardiovascular system, and so forth. These terms will be used throughout the rest of A&P to describe where things are in relation to something else. So it's a good idea to helpfully get these in set and learn what the different directional terms are. As you're studying, try using them. Use them to describe things around you. If you can just pick things at random and describe what you're using, you've got it. So directional terms. Useful to learn now, but it'll help you in the future for sure.